Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Wisdom Wednesday live talk show and welcome to Broken to Be Blessed Network. I'm your host, Samantha McNeil. And if you're just seeing me for the first time, I am very outgoing. I love to meet new people. I love to take pictures. I love wearing lip gloss. I love to dress up. And I just love meeting new people, helping people. I'm a trained counselor, I'm a life coach and a mindset coach. And we all know, and if you don't know, we have deemed, and I think I've literally owned Wednesdays. It's one of my favorite days of the week. One morning I got up and it was Tuesday and I was already thinking about Wednesday and I made the post and I was like, today's what? Today is Tuesday. Oops, I gotta delete this for tomorrow. So Wednesdays are one of my favorite days. I tell you, I get excited when it's Wednesday. And just to say happy Wisdom Wednesday. Yes, so I've literally owned Wednesday and we are on a journey. We are striving and thriving to be and to become a better version of ourselves. And we know it's no easy work. Oh Lord, we have to throw away some of the old stuff that we know. We have to change our mind. We have to, it's just so much work to be a better version of ourselves, right? Yes, we have to heal from some things and all of that. And I be as transparent as I can, right? Letting you know that yes, my journey, I was an overthinker. Oh my God. And even now, you ask the question, do I stop? No, it comes natural. But now I'm able to know when it's at me and I can turn it off. So I don't get carried away too much in it. I can say, come now, Samantha, it's time for us to get out of this. Don't go down that road. So yes, thriving and striving to be and to become a better version of ourselves, knowing that mindset is everything. Mindset, oh my God, every aspect of our lives. If we think we're sad, you're gonna be sad. If you take on the sad and the sorrowful feeling, and oh, nobody loves me, and oh, nobody's gonna this, you're always gonna feel like that. But if you say, hey, no, life is good. I'm going to make it good. I'm going to put on my clothes. I'm going to take some pictures. I remember in the pandemic when we used to have Wisdom Wednesday live talk show for every Wednesday night. In the Wednesdays, I had a ball with my Wednesdays. At that time, I wasn't working. I was home. And I tell you, I made the best of my Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, you could not tell me or tell anyone that I didn't go anywhere. No, I went nowhere. But I dressed up like I was going somewhere. I put my clothes on, and my daughter and we went outside and we had a photo shoot every Wednesday. We had a blast. So in the pandemic, I was able to stay afloat mentally. I was happy and cheerful and bubbly and all the things. And if I feel as though I was feeling a little sad and down, I said, oh, time to go take my picture. What time is it? Let's go outside. So yes, that's how I keep it going. So thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm happy to see all of you. We know others are going to come on. But if you're already on, just go ahead and share on your page so that somebody will see what we're talking about tonight and they will join in the conversation. They'll listen in, they'll share, and the healing process will start for somebody who needs to heal, because it's a big topic tonight. Father wounds. Oh my God. And thank God I got the expert. Yes, to talk about it. Yes, I have a little story, my own self. Amen. To talk about, to share in the discussion tonight. But I'm happy to see you all, and we are just ready to roll. Yes, for the persons who are on, I decided to go live on Facebook. And for the persons who are on Facebook, you will hear what's happening, but you'll only see me. But that's okay. This it's radio, right? It's talk show. So you hear what's happening and you just see the host, but all the other persons are here on StreamYard with me. So I'm thankful to have you all with me this evening, and we just want to have a wonderful discussion and help each other as best as possible. So I have with me a few persons in our live studio tonight. I'm hoping to see two more persons, but we're gonna go on until they're here. But tonight I have with me Miss Davene Harris, and she's a therapeutic coach, and she is a trained Christian counselor and a relationship coach with a current niche of serving women with childhood trauma due to the physical or emotional absence of their father. Yes, she has helped them overcome and heal their father wounds and live a life of wholeness. That's what she does. So she's here tonight. I have with me uh, uh, Reverend Dr. Michael Barcliffe. He has worked he's a pastor, and he has worked with in the school system for many years. So he has experience seeing these things and knowing how these things are and all of these things. We have Pastor Buckley. I think he stepped out, but he's gonna be here with us. I have two other persons that are gonna be joining us tonight, and we are just going to roll. All right. So while I thought of tonight's discussion, while I thought of tonight's uh, presentation, I I went down memory lane for a bit just to see some of the things that I have seen for myself. I've worked as a school counselor for many years, and I remember this particular situation that I knew of a young man. We went to the same primary school. I know him, but he didn't know me. He was now a parent at the school I was working as the counselor. And he was as a student, as a boy, he gave no ends of trouble and all of those things. Now he's a father, and his child is now doing the same thing. He wants the best for him. He's trying, takes him to school, he's doing everything that he needs to do, but the boy is just giving no ends of trouble. And one morning, he brought the boy to my office, the counselor's office, and he was sore upset. He was going to beat or hit the life out of him because he was just frustrated that this boy is giving too much. He's just doing too much. And as a father, he is just frustrated. He don't know what to do. And I'm like, oh my God. I know him as a child. I know that what the boy is doing, he's just a replica of his own father. And we've seen this so many times in our society. It's now Black History Month, and we see it. We see it generational. We see our fathers are not in the homes. We see them, they're in the homes, but they're just there. Sometimes they don't know what to do and all of these things. And tonight we just want to look at what it is, what is father wounds, how we can heal from it, how can we identify some of the signs, because we realize that our therapeutic coach tonight will tell us some of the things that will manifest even for the ladies when their fathers are not in their lives. Some things will manifest in their lives, and you realize that it affects them throughout their entire life. So over to you, Davene.
Thank you so much, Samantha, and good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's really my pleasure to be here and to shed light on the whole issue or the whole matter of father wounds. But before I start, I want to pose this question to you. What do you think is the biggest problem in our world? Do you think it's crime and violence? Do you think it's poverty? Do you think it's even the fact that we're now in a pandemic? Someone was asked this question some years ago, and his answer was simply this: the root cause of the problem in our world is because fathers are absent. And he went on to say that if fathers were in their place in the homes and doing what they were supposed to do, then we wouldn't have to think about crime and violence. We wouldn't have to be thinking about poverty and all the other ills that our society faces. And so I want you to actually picture a world where all our fathers are in their place doing their thing, and imagine how life would be different. And then I want you to consider that the reason why the world is in the state that it is in right now, it's because our fathers were out of place. And this, I must say, is not a blame game. It's an awareness that had our fathers been in their place, and when I say fathers, I'm not just talking about our immediate father, I'm talking about from all the way back, generations back, being in their place, doing what they were supposed to do, chances are that we would not have had to deal with some of the things that we've endured over the years. So I'm Davene Harris. I am a therapeutic coach by profession. I have my own business going on, and I have sought to, from my own experience and from my postgraduate studies, go into the area of dealing with father wounds. And I refer to myself as an expert because I too have had to uh, deal with that journey myself of having a father who was physically present in the home but emotionally absent from my life, and seeing where his emotional absence or emotional unavailability affected me in some ways. And even before I get into my own story, I want to give some credence or some basis to what I mean by when I say father wounds. So, what are father wounds, you might ask? From my perspective, from my own opinion and my definition of it, these are traumatic impacts that a child suffers, whether male or female, when their father is either physically absent or emotionally absent from their lives. Their development and upbringing was uh, impacted or affected in a negative way because their father was not present in the home, or he was present but emotionally he was unavailable. And when we think of father wounds, we sometimes would go back to a common phrase or a common definition or wording that we know, such as absentee fathers. And we would most times think of that as, oh, the father is actually not present in the homes. And so we think of, oh, these are the results of single mother households. But we do have men who are absent, who are present in the homes. Their physical absence is not the consideration there, but now their emotional absence. And then we have some other terms, such as father hunger, which, though it's a byproduct of absenteeism, it speaks even to how a child responds to nutrition or the intake of food due to the absence of their father. So they either would not eat at all because they don't know how to deal with the absence, or they overeat and have severe medical conditions on both ends because they're trying to actually fill the void of a father, the actual hunger of a father, with food, or choose not to have any relationship with food to continue to suffer in that hunger. So overall, those terminologies show that there are debilitating effects that children will suffer way on into their adult years because fathers are absent. And then we talk about the absence, we look at how this absence is inflicted. How does it come about? And as I already said, it's either a physical absence or an emotional absence. And that physical absence can take the form of death. So you experienced growing up with your mom alone because maybe while your mom was pregnant with you, your father died, or when you were a smaller child, your father died, or growing up into teenagers, whatever, at whatever stage your father passed away, and there's nothing that you can do about it, and you're thinking that your life is just different because your father died. But there is an effect that happens because he wasn't present. All right. And then there is the physical absence caused by with a separation or divorce. So if your parents were together in a communal relationship and whatever happens and they have separated and your father is not in the home, you're going to be affected by his absence. If it's a case where the marriage ended in divorce, you're also going to be affected by that. Um, then there's also the idea that him being incarcerated, let's say he did, things that were not acceptable by law, so he was incarcerated, placed behind bars for a long time. That absence also affects you. Let's say he was critically ill and in the hospital for long periods of time and not able to emotionally respond to you or to be there for you or to see you develop because his illness has prevented him from doing so. That is also going to affect you. And then, I'm a Jamaican girl, so I grew up in primary school knowing this idea of barrel kids. And what that meant was we had kids in Jamaica who their fathers were overseas trying to, give them a better life. But that idea of migration also affects a child because the father is not around 24/7, only visiting probably on holidays. So that also is a type of physical absence. And then we have absences through abusive or addictive behaviors where the father has different things controlling them with a substance or lifestyles that affect them and control them to the point where they cannot be emotionally available to their children. They run to the drinking and the smoking and the gang banging or whatever else it is, the what you call it, when you play lotto and all the gambling, that stuff. They run to that kind of stuff and replace their relationship that they should have with their child with that kind of a addictive or abusive lifestyle or behavior. Then we talk about the whole idea of just simply neglect, like they're not there. They're not there, whether um uh from an emotional perspective or financially not being able to provide. There's just this ongoing case of neglect happening and also emotional abuse. So all those types of absences affects the child in one way or another. And as Samantha already described the incident or that case with her former classmate, now student's father, we see that most times the apple does not fall far from the tree. And I already established that what we see our parents or our fathers do is as a result of what they were taught. And it was because too they never had the awareness. And so I want to once again plug this in here. We're not blaming them. We want to get to a stage where we can say we understand that you never had the tools, the resources, and the awareness of how to parent the best way possible. And we're not going to bypass the fact, however, that your lack of resources actually did affect us. We're going to just say, and it's the idea of duality. Yes, you were doing the best you could, but the best you could also affected me in a particular way. So we want to get that out there and have that understanding and awareness and not playing the blame game. And then we look at how, when, what are the effects? What are the impacts? How do we see this absence affecting the child? How is it manifested in the child's life? And when I often talk of this, I talk about the extremity. So when I talked about the food thing earlier, the child either not eating any food or just eating too much, and we see that we're on both spectrums, whether anorexic or obese health condition is one of the situations there. But there are some other ways in which the fatherhood is manifested in a child's life. And as I said before, it can either be male or female. And further on, I'll be speaking more from a female perspective because I am a female and I will be sharing my story as well. So I want to first say that the way in which a child is emotionally wounded creates a perspective and a lens of how they see themselves, how they see others, and how they see God. So if they have been wounded, they sometimes, without healing, will operate from a place of negative emotional responses, right? Now we talk about self esteem, and there is a healthy form of self esteem. But when a child is wounded, their self esteem is going to be unhealthy in the sense that it's either going to be very, very low or very, very high. So somebody with low self-esteem doesn't think anything of themselves. They don't think they're worthy of anything good. They don't think they're worthy of being loved and accepted and heard and seen. And then the other extreme of somebody with a very high self-esteem, they think they are so much in a bag of chips, or they're ice cream with the cherry on top. They step on people. They don't treat people right because everything is all about them, and we see that there is a lack of balance. Then we look even at the idea of self-worth and self-love. When a person is emotionally wounded, what worth do they give to themselves? Is it that they, as I said, with the self-esteem issue, it's very either poor or very high. Then we look at the whole idea of body image, which I can speak to because that was one of my ways of manifesting emotional wounds, that you don't think you look good. You're not able to look yourself in the mirror and love what's looking back at you. You're not able to accept that this is how you were made. And for those of us who are believers, really take into consideration Psalm 139 verse 14, which says to you that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so it has you now comparing yourself to others and trying to do other things to yourself to try to look like people and to feel good about, who you are. And the extreme of somebody thinking that, well, I'm good looking, I'm cute, I'm this, and everybody else is worse than I am. And as we're in Black History Month, let's just say we see the effects of that today with the whole idea of racial injustice. So let's just inject that right there. And then for other areas of manifestation, we see where somebody who is emotionally wounded has a difficulty setting boundaries. Either your boundaries are too loose or they're too rigid. So, for example, somebody with too loose boundaries will definitely be a people pleaser. Everybody that wants you, you say yes to them. If pastor wants it, you say yes. If teacher wants it, you say yes. If um mayor wants it, whoever it is that's asking for your attention, you say yes to them. You people please. And here's the reason why. Your your father was absent. He didn't say yes to you, and you don't like the fact that he didn't say yes to you. So for you to feel better about yourself, you say yes to everyone, running yourself to a wreck sometimes, not understanding that there actually can be a balance. And on the other extreme of the two rigid boundaries, nobody has an opportunity to get close to you. Nobody has access to you. You live in isolation. Nobody can ask you anything because guess what? When I wanted somebody, the person who was supposed to be there for me, to say yes to me when I wanted my emotional needs met or my financial needs met, they weren't there. So I'm replicating that. I ain't going to do it because I don't have a framework for how it's supposed to be done. Then we think of also emotional expressions. Ooh, that one is crazy as well. Anger and rage that you developed towards your father is now passed on to others. And I have this quote that I often refer to, is that when you are wounded and you don't try to heal from it, you're going to be bleeding on people who did not cut you. So you are taking the anger and the rage that you have for a father that was absent and you're passing it on to others. They didn't do you anything, but because you have not been able to stabilize, as it were, your emotions and understand that, okay, my father is separate from these other people in the world and I can actually relate to them in an emotional, healthy way. You don't have that awareness, you don't have that lens, so you respond negatively. And then we talk about relationships, and I can testify about that one as well. What happens is that Your father is supposed to be the framework and the blueprint of affection, attention, and affirmation, as well as acceptance. And we see all of that through a relational structure. So when you have a good relationship with your father, he's the one that's going to let you know that you're worthy, you're loved, you are beautiful, all that good stuff. And when you don't get that, because it's inside you, it's an innate need. You're born with that. You can't change it. No matter where you were born and who you were born to, we are all born with that. And when dad does not give that to us, what happens? We go outside and we look for it. For the females, it's a case of, and I know it's not something that we easily recognize, but we tend to look at like women in the area of promiscuity, and we wonder, why would you be just going all over the place giving your body to random men like that? She's crying out for her dad, and because he was missing in the formative years of her life, for her, comfort comes through lying with another man, no matter how he treats her or whatever. So on a relational scale, we see where once dad wasn't there to set that foundation, then we go out and we look for it in other men. And finally, performance wise, whether in academics or in career, we either perform poorly or we do the most. As I said before, sometimes we step on people to get to the top, and it's almost like there is no balance in our lives. So the long and short of this is emotional wounds are showing imbalance in very many areas of our lives, from the way we see ourselves and the way we see others and the way we see God. I don't know if you want me to continue and go straight into my story, Samantha, or if you want to pause for questions or
We're gonna pause
feedback.
and let the other persons that are uh on the panel just share their thoughts,
Okay.
and then we'll come back to you. So, uh, Mr. Barcliffe, what you have to state on the matter? She has covered so much, and it being a person in ministry and also in the school system, I would uh what's the word? Imagine that you would have experienced or have seen some of these things firsthand. What's your take?
I think he's muted.
Piggyback on what I just heard from Miss Harris here on the matter of emotional and the father. One of the biggest things that I see in the school system setting is the kids that come that I deal with, father figures. You can tell the ones that are in the home and the ones that lack. And the thing is, in order to really try to help them, as she mentioned, trauma, a lot of these kids come with trauma, and it starts from the home. And majority of the time, it's because of the lack of the male figure in the home. The male figure plays a vital role in the foundation of the household, and that's biblically. And I think the reason some fathers miss the foundation of how to really be a father and a male is because it's not enough of the biblical foundation of what a father is or a male figure. And looking at Proverbs, the 4th chapter, and the first verse, it says, "Hear, O sons, the instructions of a father, and giving attention that you may gain understanding." So I think the biggest thing here in listening and just to try to add a little bit is, if the foundation of the fatherhood is not being taught, our kids, and especially our young black males, they are suffering because of the father figures. The responsibility of being a male and a father has huge implications. Some can do it, some cannot, because it requires a lot of us as men and male figures in the home, because not only they serve as fathers, they serve as husbands, they serve as head of household, they serve in a lot of capacity that a lot is expected of the male and the fathers, and some just can't accept all the responsibilities. They just, it's so much, and some of them, they tend to run away from those responsibilities. And when they run away from them, that's lacking in the children's lives. And that's part of the problem that we have in the school system is a lot of the kids that I deal with behavior-wise, they lack a male presence in the home. Moms are great, don't get me wrong, and they are instructors as well. But there's something different when you have the male figure in the home and teaching and being a co-teacher with the spouse or the mother. And when we can figure out how to get these males in place to accept responsibilities biblically and as a male and a father, then we can see perhaps the crime rates maybe to start go down. But we just don't have enough models for these young boys to see now when it comes to the father. You can so easily become a father by having a child, but do that make you a father? It's more than having a child. Fatherhood is a broad spectrum. Many can and many cannot. And what it does, as she just said, when you are present physically but not emotionally involved, you're still not really carrying on the duties of a father in the home, because kids need more than just a presence. They need your emotions to tell them, I'm proud of you, I love you, you are doing well. And then on top of that, even when they're not doing well, they need fathers to teach them the right way. So, that's one thing that I really have a issue with, those males that are fathers that call themselves fathers but are not in the home. Because when I came up, my father was in the home. He was an example for my brothers and I to see what it was for a male, the importance of working a job to provide for a family. My father worked 3 jobs to make sure that he provided for the household. And we saw an example of a father that had his hands in the house emotionally and, just being there. He was there. And that's one thing I've always been able to take from him that made me, I hope by my daughters that I've been a good father, and also to my wife that I've been a good husband, because I had foundation of a male that was presented in front of me. And I think that is one of the biggest problems that we are facing today as advisors and influencers trying to help people and change lives. And I believe that's what all of us that are on this tonight is about, changing lives. We face that challenge because the foundation of a fatherhood is not there where it needs to be. And we have to figure out a way to instill that in fathers to get a foundation that is more than having a child. It's much far greater than having a child. Because we can find anybody to do that, but I'm talking about being a father that's in the home, that's there, teaching, loving, and being a father. So I think it definitely, when those kids, you can tell the ones that lack fathers, most of the time you can pick it up because they're traumatized. They live with anger. And that anger comes out in the way of students, or it come out towards the teachers or whomever, because they're angry. They're angry because perhaps they might have got up in the morning, didn't have food because there's not a father in the house to help the mother to provide food. So they come in, they're already angry. Could have been angry because this weekend they didn't get to see the father because he said I was coming, but he didn't come. So the male figure is an important piece in the household, and him and the female together, if we can get that getting that working together, I think we can see some change going on. So really the male father is a big role. But the thing is, and I'm finished, we can't allow ourselves to still be stuck in that because you didn't have that. I think there's enough models around now that you can't keep saying that happened and this happened and that happened. We got to stop letting that stuff like that halt us from being still successful fathers because we might not have seen it. I think there's enough lecturers and enough models around now that you can see what a good father looks like. So it's time for some of the male to step it up and stop using, my father was not there. You need to be different than what your father was if he was not there, that you become the father that children and wives need as a husband in this day's society, that we can change society and make society different. So that's my perspective right now on dealing with this amount of the father and the father that has been wounded and haven't healed from his wound and realizing it's time to move past your wounds. We're not there because God has not failed us, although you was wounded. But God has not failed us in the midst of those wounds that we had to live through. And the fact he hadn't failed us because we're still here tonight. So that tells us God didn't fail us, even if we come from a wounded father or somewhere in the home.
Awesome.
Samantha, if you permit me to just respond to Sir Barclays before. Listen, sir, here's my thing.
Yes.
Nowadays, when I speak to men and I hear them speak the way you just did, I have to commend you. I want to publicly, on Samantha's platform, commend you and your father for being an example. That's the first place I want to start. I want to commend you because I believe too that, as you said, there are some examples. I don't know that they're being commended. I don't know that they're being broadcasted. I don't know that they're being shown and congratulated. And it's not a matter of, oh, it's what they're supposed to be doing. We've seen over the years, Mother's Day is a public national holiday. And then
Yes,
4 weeks down the line, when it's Father's Day, it ain't so. You can't tell me that the world is filled with bad fathers.
You
So
are right.
yeah, so we want to start by saying great respect to you, Sir Barcliffe, and the Barcliffes before you who did the right thing. And I'm pretty sure if I should have a one-off conversation with your daughters, they're going to tell me that you were a great example and a framework for how they should pursue relationships with men. Because here's the thing, in my studies, we often don't think about the idea that fathers are teachers because we think that, oh, the mom's the nurturer. We focus on that responsibility. And you're like, but what does the father do? So I will tell you, research shows that between age 0 to 8, the father's primary role in the life of his children is to teach. Anything that you teach, whether by doing or not doing, stays in that child.
Yep.
It's foundational and it is carried out. So a man's job in a little girl's life, when she's looking at her father, she's like, I'm a date somebody like you. That's what it's showing her. And then on the other hand, for the boy, it's like, I'm a be like you. So if you're not treating my mama right, I ain't gonna treat my girl right when I get into a relationship. He is a teacher. Everything he says and does, his children are looking at him and they are going to follow. Now, you did mention the whole idea of the single parent households headed by a woman. Why do we think that's the case? Because these women were raised by absent fathers and they become attracted to men like their fathers. So the cycle continues. And also, as Sir Barcliffe says, you got to get to a stage where you say it ends with me, whether from the male perspective or the female perspective. If you know that you were wounded, you never had the best example of a father, and you're like, but it ain't right. What I experienced, it ain't right. It's got to stop with me. From a male's perspective, my daddy wasn't the best father. He never treated my mama right. I'm not going to do the same thing like it. It has to stop with me. That should be our perspective and our mantra in this day and age, because the awareness is there and the examples are also there. So I'll just pause here while we hear from Sir Buckley.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Buckley, your views.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Harris. You cut me right in there. I was gonna just take the baton and run with it, but it's okay. Because Mr. Barcliffe did end on
Thank you,
a very good point.
Stacia.
The point that he made was right in line with where I was going to start in saying that I think it all boils down to an awareness, and whether that's self-awareness for the male that is growing up, or that did not have that father example, having the awareness that I didn't have an example to follow. And also having an awareness to see somebody that is a good example and saying, I need to follow that example. That is something that I should and can aspire to. You know, sometimes that awareness, and if that awareness is not there, there's problems. You're gonna have problems if you don't recognize when a father is a good father and when a father is not a good father. And I could say from my own personal experience, because I always, even growing up, I observe fathers, I observe families, I see what's going on around me. I'm always looking at people for example, right? So I would see at church and growing up in different cultures and church environments, seeing that there are cultural things. Going to a church that was, you know, the majority of them were Caucasian, and being the only Black family in the church, and seeing the dynamics of how, you know, they kind of, you know, they go out and they play ball. Like, what is that? Yeah, you know, throwing baseball around and stuff like that. And, you know, that's fun, you know, but coming from a Caribbean household and a Caribbean background, that's not something that Caribbean fathers really will do with their children, right? So, you know, seeing that and trying to figure out how does that fit in with me? Is that something that I should, you know, mimic? Is that something that is good, you know, or do I follow what I see, you know, in my culture? You know, so I'm just making that as an example that some of it is cultural, right? Um, and there are, of course, we know there are institutional things, things that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Um, we know all that is there, okay? But as Mr. Barcliffe says, are we going to just allow it to just keep going? Are we going to just say that, you know, woe is me, my grandfather, my father, you know, they had it this way, so I'm just going to have it this way as well, you know? It again, it starts with an awareness of what should be, and then it has to follow that I say, I want to be good, or I want to aspire to being a good father. I want to be the person that my daughter looks at whenever she's ready to choose a mate. You know, I want to be that person that she looks at and says, okay, all right, this guy that I want to talk to, yeah, he looks cute, but, you know, he don't talk to his mother right, right? Okay, so you wanna have that awareness, and so much of what we see and what we aspire to is is given to us through culture, through pop culture. Like, we look on TV and say, you know, I want to be like, what was his
Cosby
name?
family.
Exactly. Yeah, I was trying to remember the TV name. You know, I want to be like like have a family like that, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, or I want to be a father like Uncle Phil, or I want to have a father like Uncle Phil, right?
Hmm.
And we look at TV and we look at movies and we say, you know, we want our lives to match up to that, not recognizing that the things that you see on TV have been scripted, have been written down, have been taken from all different angles and different perspectives. There's many people that are giving their input, a lot of people that are doing different things. So we have to be able to recognize, again, be aware of what is being presented before us. Okay. And then, you know, finally, I will say, as Mr. Barcliffe mentioned, he went right to the book, right to the scriptures, right? So even if you do not see in you know, somebody that you could touch, somebody that you can actually physically sit down and talk to say, I need a good example, I need somebody to kind of show me how to do this, you got the book, right? You got the Word of God that is really the best example of fatherhood that we can find. Um, I found for myself that um, when I recognized that there were certain things that were lacking in what my father was giving me growing up, I found fathers in church. I didn't go up to them and say, formally, "You're now my father. Nice to meet you." No, it wasn't anything like that. But from afar off, I would observe and see and take note, and make mental note, make emotional connections and do things that would mimic those good behaviors and those good things that I did see. And again, when you read in scripture and you see certain things, just like, I don't see that. There's nothing wrong in seeing that there's something that is good for you to do in the Word of God and just implementing it yourself, right? So I'll pause there. I'll stop with that. But to kind of cap it, awareness is very, very important. Being able to recognize what are the good examples and the bad examples, and then take from those things things that are fitting for us in our lives, whether we be men or women.
And that is so true. And while you all spoke, it just allowed me to reflect on my own life. I've had my own fair share from tradition, from generation. My father, uh, and I think somebody mentioned about, I think it was Davine who mentioned at the age of 8. It was maybe from that age that I knew in my mind that I had to look for somebody else that that I am going to look for some good qualities, because my father wasn't displaying the qualities that I would want in a husband. And I knew from then that I didn't want what he portrayed, because from maybe about 8 years old, he was going to church, he backslid, and he was always going out, and it was infidelity, and it was just chaos in the home, and he was just rough and loud and aggressive and all of those things. And he was like, no, he would always disappoint. I love to go to church, and he would promise at the last minute that yes, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna take you. And he never shows. He don't show up until church hours has passed, or when he comes with a smiley face and like it's not serious. And I'm so hurt and torn, and he's taking it for a joke. And I'm like, no, these are the qualities that I don't want. And I remember even one night when he came, I was still insisting that I was going to church, and we went to church so late that we could not get out of the car, because when we got to church, church was dismissed and everybody was leaving. It was so bad. We used to have to walk to church, and when we get dressed, put on our high heels and said, "Daddy, we are ready." Oh, I can't move now. I know this, I know that. We have to take off back the shoes to go walk. So those things were just so distasteful and so hurtful, and he saw it as nothing. And even to this day, if you have a conversation with him, he says he did his best. He did his best. He didn't see anything that he had done wrong. But when you check generation, his father was the same thing. He had another outside family not far from where his wife lived, and his father was just aggressive and just loud and was emotionally absent and all of these things. And I remember I remember when I met Chenis, and we were friends. We were youths and we were friends. And I remember one night we went on a church trip, and he said to me, we were traveling in the bus, and he said to me, when the light turned off, he want me to give him a kiss. And I was upset, because what was happening to me, I was the strong, and the walls were up, and if you come with the nonsense, you're not, the nonsense and the abuse and touching me and playing with me was not gonna happen. So I was just so hard to reach. It was a hard nut to crack. And I tell you, we were friends, and for that, what we would say a simple thing, it was over. It was done. And even when he came and he said he didn't mean anything and he was sorry, he couldn't tell me that he was sorry. Because in my mind, I'm saying, here goes somebody who is coming with the nonsense. And I don't have no time for all of that, because I ain't going through all of what I saw or what I would have experienced throughout my entire life. That's not going to happen. So I was just a hard nut to crack. I was just so hard. And it was 1 full year that I decided that, okay, that was just, we could try again. It was 1 full year, so it was even destined that we still be together, because I was finished. And it was just that. But that was the stance for me. And fast forward to when we were going to get married, I've always said to my father, when I'm getting married, even if you have a whole business of limo service and it's free, I don't want it. I am going to get somebody else to do the honors, because I have no trust and confidence that you are going to show up. And he felt offended, but it was the truth. There was no confidence, because over the years as a child, this is what has always been happening. When he used to make a promise, never fulfill a promise. And then when the promise is not fulfilled, it's like it's nothing. So for me, I was sharing with a friend that being vulnerable and being vulnerable to be loved and all of those things was very hard for me. And I was sharing with a friend that when you find that you're still hard and still rough until you get to the place where you have healed and you realize that being vulnerable, nothing is wrong. You don't have to be strong and be always on top of everything and hold everything and don't want to smile and don't want to all of those things, because something is going to happen and something is wrong. So healing is a beautiful place, and being able to become vulnerable even as a married woman. So we are talking about real stuff tonight. And for some persons if you look back, you can see that, oh, maybe this is what had happened to me, or this is what is happening to me. So we have the expert here tonight. After tonight, you can get her number, our credential, everything, and help is available. Over to you, Davene.
Thank you so much, Sam. And once again, kudos to you as well, Mr. Buckley, because as I said, it's my nature to just congratulate men who I see are doing a great job. And for you to say that, not having that example, but that inner boy, that little boy in you, realizing that, oh, but there are good men that I can get example from. So even from then, doing that and being the husband and father that you are today, I want to congratulate you for doing that. And also being able to recognize that in my own self. Not that I, as you said, went up to the men and say, oh, I want you to be my father, but I was able to look on the examples I saw men who were doing, and I got very close to a lot of church leaders because I saw them doing what I think a healthy church leader should do. And having my father as a church leader and not doing it the right way, I needed to see it being done healthy within the church. And even having Samantha's story being shared, and I'm like, oh, Samantha and I must have been twins in a previous life, because it's almost like when your father aggravates you and then laughs. Like I used to quote Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4 to my father on a regular basis. The Bible says, do not provoke your children to wrath. Why are you provoking me? Like you'd make me angry about something. I'm telling you, and you're laughing. I'm like, sir, you don't hear what the Bible said, right? And it's as Samantha says, really a case where you need to be able to now look and say, this sounds familiar. This a part of my story is somewhere in one of these things that I've been hearing from the persons who are presenting tonight. And I just want to inject here that when we hear the words trauma or mental or emotional health, sometimes we stay far from those terminologies, especially from a church perspective. One, because we believe that everything is spiritual and everything can be dealt with by prayer and fasting and worshiping, which I don't have no problem with. But I will say that's half of the thing right there, because we're not just spiritual beings, we're also physical beings. So physical things need to be treated with physically, emotional things need to be treated with emotionally. We need to get it right. But also when we look at the word trauma, we think of it as some high reach, far, big medical or psychological terminology, and you wouldn't even consider that the anger that you're seeing displayed by a child is as a result of trauma. Or the fact that a young girl is very friendly with a lot of boys is as a result of trauma. We think of it as some big things to the point where we miss the little things. So I want us to take into consideration that one, almost all of us in this world has suffered some form of trauma. That doesn't make you a bad person. And two, awareness, as Mr. Buckley rightly said, is very much the first step. So as we continue to talk, and as I go into now sharing my story, maybe you can see yourself, or you know of somebody whose story is similar to mine, and mine is really coming from a church perspective. So I grew up in a household, a Christian household, from according to our Jamaican parlance, from me there me knee, me there church. I was born on the church bench, and I was born to a father who was heavily involved in ministry. And I think some way, somehow, my mom might be on here listening, so she can agree to the fact that she was the one at home with her two children while the church had commissioned my father to be out evangelizing. And it was an ongoing thing. So the running joke I had from I was a child was that my father was at church 8 days of the week. Now, for some people, they were like, that's commendable, of course, man of God. But when you think of it, him prioritizing church resulted in me being wounded. I am not sorry that my father was ministering, but I'm sorry that ministry was his priority over his duties to his family, right? And so even another thing, another running joke I had in high school. So I had when my friends would be talking and they were like, me not swear for my father. And sorry for those of you who don't understand the patois, I'll translate in a bit. But it would be like, me not swear for my father must have cheat. And I'd be like, so my friends would be like, I won't swear for my dad because he's probably cheating and being, out there with other women apart from my mom. And I would be like, well, I'm pretty sure my father is not cheating. But behind that statement that I will boldly make to my friends was the thought that, but of course he's cheating. He's cheating with my family, with the church, because his priority was the church. And so what did that mean for me? As I said before, my mom would be at home with us. So my learning of the scriptures and all that good stuff, learning how to pray, wasn't from the recognized priest responsibility in my family. It was my mom who taught me those things. And as I said before, who is supposed to be the teacher in the family? The father. We think that it's the mother's role. It ain't so. Who is the master teacher of us all? Jesus. And who he says supposed to be like him in terms of family structure? The fathers, the husbands, right? So going back to that and getting to a stage where two major things I want to point out in my story, and maybe other things will come out, but I remember when I went to college, I would not always want to come home. At a point in time, I wouldn't always want to come home on holidays or on weekends or whatever. And here's the simple reason why. I'm away for a couple of months and I come home for just the weekend, and I don't get to spend any time with my father because I get home, like, let's say late Friday evening. He's probably out on some church duty. Saturday, he is gone to outreach. Sunday morning, we are at church, and I have to leave by Sunday evening to go back on campus. And Sundays after church, this was my experience. Every single time I would go home for the weekend and go to church on Sunday with my family. Church is finished. Okay, Dad, let's go home. And it's like, nope, can't go home, have to be here doing church stuff. I would be in the midst of him trying to talk to members of the church and be like, Dad, can you just pay me some attention right now? Like, forget these people for now. You'll see them when I'm gone. And it was like a constant competition until it got to a place where I was like, nope, I can't do this anymore. So I got to a point where I wasn't going home on a regular basis. So when holidays came, and sorry, Mom, you don't know this part of my story, but when holidays came, I found somebody else yard to go to, and they weren't always females, just so you know, right? Because why? I just never felt wanted at my home when I went home. Like I had gotten to a stage where the place that grew me up in terms of church and whatever, I didn't want to go there because these church people were taking my father from me. That was my thing for the longest while. I can't deal with it. Like, you prefer them that than me. And it was just very, very heartrending. Like, I couldn't do this, right? But the straw that broke the camel's back for me was that on my graduation from college, it was on a Sunday, and I remember when we found out the graduation date, I readily called my dad and I said to him, I know it's on a Sunday. I don't care that it's on a Sunday, but you have to be there. Those were my words to him. And I had the conversation with him. I'm like, listen, can put church before you can put church on the back bench just for a Sunday afternoon to come to my graduation. And the way how I had the conversation with him, he sounded as if he was considering it. So I was, feeling joyful and saying, yes, for once, my dad is going to not, prioritize church over me. Even though I know in my head that 6 years prior to that, it was the same case where my mom went to the same college, had her graduation on the Sunday, and she had to be there by herself because he wasn't there. And so myself and my brother could not go as well. And I was like, well, this time around, he's going to be different. He's going to do different. I had the conversation with him, and he sounds as if he's going to be there. He was just like, remind me, and I'll give you my answer. And I remember the Thursday before the Sunday, I called him. And I said, just reminding you, Dad, that Sunday is the graduation. So I need you to be there X time or whatever. And he told me, no, he's not coming because he has to be at church. Heartbreak is not even the closest word to describe what I experienced in that moment. And it devastated me so bad. I was in my friend's dorm room, I remember. And when I came off the phone, I said to her, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I said to her, call XYZ. It was a mutual friend that we had. I said, tell him to come and get me out of here. I can't do this. And when the friend came and he got us, he brought us to his apartment. And, we're just chilling now, trying to not, think about what I heard on the phone a couple minutes or hours ago. And then he said, let's go on top of the building. And I to this day, it bugs me every time I think of it, how he didn't even know what was happening and took us on top of his apartment building where we could have seen all of New Kingston while I was contemplating wanting to die because my father told me he wasn't coming to my graduation. And I think in that moment, something just broke in me, and I'm like, you know what? I'm never, ever going to ask my father to show up for me again. I'm not going to do this. This is a fight that I can't win. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Why do I have to be begging my father to show up for me? Like, why is church so more important to him than I am? So I went to my graduation. My mom, she's a great supporter. So she came, never felt so bad, hung out with friends and just, forgot about it. And it took me years later to tell him how I felt about him not showing up for me on that day, and letting him know that I was just tired of having to beg him for his attention, and it was just too much. And it was always a case for me where I felt like the church, the place that really was supposed to be an example and showing somebody who is in leadership how to be good at home, because that's what the word of the Lord says, that you have to be an example at home before you come and try to lead God's people. Like the Bible says, you have to rule your own house well. And if you're not doing that, in my eyes, sorry, Dad, you're being a hypocrite. And I've called my father out on stuff before, because as you can see, I'm very expressive. Sometimes in the past, I actually can confess that I was rude when expressing myself to my father. I've been rude to my dad before, and I'm going to get into another story soon. But I had to let him know that you're not actually living what the Bible says right here, and you're going to have to fix up. I said you're being an hypocrite, so you're going to have to decide whether or not. I said to him one time, I said, the Bible talks about you not being an infidel, not when you don't provide for your household. The Bible says you're worse than an infidel, and your prayers are not going to be answered. I'm like, you do all of this praying all the time, you sure got hearing your prayers? Like, I was just open because I was hurt. I was like, listen, you're painting this picture to the church that you are a faithful leader and whatever not, but I'm not feeling you. I'm not seeing you as a priest. And for years, my thing was, I ain't getting married to no minister in no church, because ministers don't stay home. Ministers don't prioritize their family, so I'm not getting married to one. My father was a perfect example of who I did not want to marry. So any young man step to me, what you do in the church? I'm like, okay, sir, bye. I'm not gonna waste your time, and you're not gonna waste mine. It's not going to happen. Right? And then I had also gotten to a point where before I even, had told my father this, when I started my healing journey, it almost was like, I can't even share this with anyone. And it was the fact that if and when I do get married, sir, you ain't walking me down the aisle. I'm like, I'm not going to play the hypocrite. You have not been the example of a father to me. The man I'm marrying is nothing like you. You can come to the wedding, but you're not getting the opportunity to walk me down the aisle. Those were things that were just a part of my framework, because I was hurt. I was seriously, seriously hurt and wounded because of the prioritizing that my father did, church before family. I remember since I migrated to Canada some years ago, one Father's Day, I called my dad Sunday morning, bright and early, getting ready to go to church. I'm like, it's Father's Day, let me call daddy so I can talk to him. He had 2 cell phones at the time, so I called him on WhatsApp. Where they're talking, his other cell phone rings. He answers the phone. By the way of the conversation, I knew he was talking to somebody from church, because what? He is in a church where he, as the man, he's almost like the top. So even though his pastor is a female, he's at the second, in command. So if Father's Day, the whole church is going to tell him Happy Father's Day. So I'm talking to him on the phone. He pauses to take the phone call and decides to hang up with me to go finish a conversation with his church member. So, that's bringing me back to my college days and what used to happen in my face. And I remember, saints of God and all who are listening to me, on that Sunday, it was the day of the Lord, but it never stopped me from showing him how displeased I was. I said, I'm tired of you putting church people before me. This is, and I just hung up the phone. I didn't even give him a chance to defend himself. I hung up the phone. Went to church, and the Lord dealt with me. It wasn't the right way to be with your father. He was wrong, but 2 wrongs don't make a right. So I ended up calling him. I apologized to him, and I once again said to him, Dad, this is getting tired now. I really am tired of you putting church people before me. So you know what? I ain't going to call you. I can't deal with this kind of stuff. So if you want to talk to me, whenever you feel like talking to me, then you call me and whatever. And even the fact that sometimes when I would call him, he's not at home. And so I can't get a chance to talk to him. And I'm like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. And that was my story going on until in 2020, even though the world experienced its pandemic, it was the year of an awakening for me doing my postgraduate studies and just recognizing that, yes, Davene, you are a victim of father wounds. The neglect that you got from your father, his emotional unavailability affected you. When I was doing the research and was reading all the studies that were done, I could see myself. Those unhealthy relationships with males, it was my thing. That rage and that anger, that was my thing. The body image was my thing. The academic performance, I saw myself in all the studies. And I was like, something, it ends with me. Like, I can't continue doing this. I'm not going to go into no more relationship with this baggage. I'm going to have to heal, and I have to do it for myself. And I went on my healing journey, went into therapy, did the work, and just got the unction from the Lord that as you're healing, you have to help others heal. And so that has been my journey since 2020, because I understand that it's not me alone. And even though we don't see the church giving that much awareness to even this kind of thing, I then now have to be the voice that brings it out to say, you know what? It has to stop. Fathers need to be aware that their priorities are misplaced. The idea, when I did my research, one of the things that I focused on was the idea of duality. So you are a father and you're a preacher, or you're a pastor, whatever your title is, but you don't know how to separate those two things inside your home. You don't know how to even prioritize them. So you get the idea that you have to put the church first. Now, the order has never changed. From the beginning of creation, the order has never changed. It was God first, and God is not equivalent to church. It was God first, then your family, then everybody else, everything else after your family. And I think where the church has failed in some respects is to have us believe that God equals church, and it ain't so. So that idea of duality is misconstrued. The boundaries are blurred, where we see that the father who is supposed to be in the home is the preacher to his children and not a father. And it just makes the children church, hate church people. They become rebellious, and it's like a whole cycle of things. So that's just a little part of my story, but I wanted you to understand that my story didn't stop at me just being wounded. The awareness came, and I decided to do the work.
So how do one heal from all of this? You've mentioned all of that, and we've looked at the signs in how persons can heal, I guess. So is there a process? Is there a phase? Is there, you just get up one morning and say, okay, I throw it away and it's brand new and it's okay? What is it like? What do one have to do to be able to heal or to go on that healing journey?
Yes, great question. Thank you for asking that. We already have put that big A word out there. It's the idea of awareness. You have to get to a stage where that awareness kicks in to make you realize that something is out of place. Something is not right. This is not the right way for your life to be, because when you consider that you're waking up every single morning with these different displays, these emotional imbalances, you have to say, no, man, I have to do something about it. And so we're becoming more aware, but what do we do after we get to that stage of awareness? So for me, I have this thing that I call, the ABCs of healing. So the idea of acknowledging that something is wrong. And there's nothing wrong with you calling the thing out. When you acknowledge that the thing is wrong, it actually helps you. So if I could use an example such as, I'm chilling with Samantha and she stepped on my toe. It's okay for me to say, oh, Sam, you actually stepped on my toe. It's okay to call it out. She stepped on my toe. It's not a matter of, oh, she probably never meant it. No, we're not blaming. We're bringing awareness and acknowledgement to the fact that this happened, and because you stepped on my toe, it hurts. So that acknowledging that something has happened and that this is how it affects you. So that's the A. For the B, it's bringing whatever hurts to the person who is trained to deal with it. And I always use this example of, if something were to happen to your foot, let's say you got a bad chop on your foot, I don't care who you are, even if you are a medical doctor, you're not going to be looking at it and saying, well, it will just heal itself, it will just take care of itself. No, you're going to get up and you're going to seek medical attention because a part of your body was wounded. Similarly, when you are acknowledging that you have an emotional wound and it's showing, your heart is bleeding, your emotional expressions are bleeding, your relationship with others are bleeding, you take that hurt and that wound that is being manifested to somebody, a trained counselor, a therapist, a social worker, a psychologist, a trauma coach, whoever, a life coach, a mindset coach, whoever it is that has an awareness of how to deal with what you are going through, you bring it to them. What happens now is that that trained person will provide you with the correct strategies, tools, resources, programs, and what I love the best, the soul work to deal with what is happening inside of you. If you're emotionally wounded, there needs to be some emotional soul work that you do to deal with that hurt. And the C is to continue on the healing journey because it never stops. As you become more aware and as you continue bringing it to the person, there's going to be a need for continuation of the healing journey. You're going to sometimes, I remember having a conversation one time with a trauma coach, and she was like, one day in one of her sessions, she was talking to her client, something came back to her memory of something that happened in her childhood, and she's like, ooh, I gotta deal with that. And I've experienced it myself too, talking to clients, they share a story and I'm like, oh, Davene, that part of you, it wasn't healed yet, so let's now bring it to the fore and let's go heal it. So it's an ongoing process of awareness, bringing it to somebody who is trained to deal with it, and then continuing on the journey. And I'll just give a little bit more of what the healing process entails, because we have a problem with the F word, forgive. We believe that when we forgive the person who hurt us, we are saying that it's okay with what they did. No, 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 no. I'm sorry you felt that way. Forgiveness is for you and not the individual. One of the best ways in which you can truly heal is through forgiveness. And I remember in my dorm room in England 2 years ago when the Lord said to me, you're going to have to forgive your father. You're going to call him. You're going to tell him the ways in which he has hurt you, and you're going to have to repeat the words, I forgive you, to him. And I did just that. I don't play with God. When God talk to me, I say yes, because I am afraid of saying no. So I say yes. And the conversation happened. Thankfully, my father is a person who believes in conversation, even though sometimes he's a disadvantage where he does most of the talking and doesn't really listen back. But in that space, when I call him up, I'm like, Dad, I need to talk to you. I want you to hear me out. I don't want you to interrupt me. I have something that I need to say to you. And I went all the way back to my childhood, went through all the things that I could remember, because as I was doing my research, I had to create a memory chart. And I will tell you that was not the easiest thing for me to do. I'm in my dorm room and tears are flowing down my eyes as I had to relive some of those hurtful things. Imagine me as a 5-year-old knowing that this particular stool that my dad brought home and said, this is your stool, and then going to church one Sunday night and seeing my stool in the pulpit of the church. I was hurt. I was like, how is that even possible? So I went down memory lane. I told him all the stories, told him how everything that he did made me feel. I went back to even the graduation story. I went to the Father's Day story. I went through every single thing. I told him, and when I was done saying all of that to him, I said, I want you to know that I forgive you. And just so you know, I'm not even looking for an apology from you. I want to release myself of the hurt that you have caused me. I forgive you. And I just wanted to let you know. So forgiveness is a very, very, very freeing thing. It's a very, very healing thing. And when you do it, you're doing it for yourself and not for the individual who hurt you.
Awesome, awesome discussion tonight. I tell you, really deep stuff. We have all been vulnerable and share how our own experiences or how we have faced father wound and all of this. And as we're about to close, we're just gonna leave our closing statements. Whatever we want to leave, what the icing want to put on the cake, what you want to leave with the viewers this evening as we close Wisdom Wednesday live talk show. Over to you, Mr. Barcliffe.
We've had a lot tonight and been a great session. And the thing that I would like to leave with, just trying to build, is, of course, going to the scriptures of what it is that we need as a father to be the foundation in the good book. And then you have to work at it. There's no one method fits all. It's something that we have to work at daily, of being the father that is needed in the homes, that we can be a good father. And you work at it day by day, and knowing that regardless of what your past might have been, that you don't want to live in your past, and that you want to be a better father if you're a father for your kids. And that way, put your focus on being a better father than what you had an example of in your own life.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barcliffe. Over to you, Mr. Buckley.
Yes, thank you. I would like to say that from my own personal experience, again, um, I recognized early enough in my development that that my father might not have all of the um, all of the things that I could aspire to, or that I wanted to aspire to. Um, and I recognized early enough, as we've already said, that forgiveness is very much important. And in my early adult life, after my development age and getting into my early adult life, um, there was some times where I said, no, I don't want to be like this, or I don't want to do that. I don't want to do those things. Like you start to recognize in yourself, um, just genetical things that you didn't know were there, and you start manifesting some of the things that you said you would never do, you said you would never be. um, but I think that it wasn't until I finally sat down and had a heart to heart with my father. This must have been about 8 or 9 years ago. We were on a road trip going from Louisville, Kentucky to Vincennes, Indiana, where I grew up. It's about a 2.5 hour drive. And my dad ended up having to pick me up. And it was just me and him on that road. And um, I recognized from that discussion that my father didn't have a good father. So I recognize that I really do have to forgive my father for not being the father that I wanted, because he never had the father that he wanted. And so I recognized that I had a choice to make. And that's what I would like to leave everyone else with tonight. You have a choice to make whether or not you're going to leave your wound open, um, or you're going to allow it to heal. It's really a choice that we have to come to grips with, and it will not change until we make the decision that we don't want to continue being wounded. We don't want to continue to allow the past to dictate what our future lives will be. So that, again, was a very um, life-changing moment for me when I actually did speak to my father, and I didn't have to say, oh, go down memory lane. That was a big reach there. I didn't have a board to list out all the different things that happened, but I was able to make that connection, and really feel that um, there was reasoning behind why I was so wounded. I was I was living a life and emulating a life of somebody that was also wounded, right? Um, so you have to forgive in that position. You have to forgive. You have to say, I don't I don't want to allow that the past to dictate, my animosity, my bitterness, the way I treat other people. I don't want to allow that, and then make the conscious decision to live the life that you want to live. Okay, so God bless you. Those are my few words.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buckley. Davine,
That was such a pastor thing to say a while ago, Mr. Buckley. Those are my few words.
testimony service is over.
I know, right? But really, really thankful for this opportunity. And in closing, I want to say that awareness is key, forgiveness is important, and help is available. And if you are in need of help, please do not be afraid to reach out for this as we celebrate Black History Month. One of the best things that you can do as you celebrate and become in tune with your history is to make a decision to break away from that mentality of, we're Black, we didn't know, we weren't we weren't able, like when we were under slavery, to do what we wanted to do. Like, we have an opportunity now to do better, so let's do better. Like, we can get help. There is help available. And as a coach, my duty is to help you whatever way I can. I actually have some free resources available, like, just in case you're not so sure. So I have something called a father wounds quiz. If you don't even know if you have a father wound, I can help you determine that through a quiz. I have the ABC's healing guide, the one that I spoke about, which basically has you doing some, activities to even try to self-heal. But there is a point of the healing journey that you, as I said before, can't do by yourself. And so as a coach in the industry, I'm able to help you move from being wounded to being whole. So you can find me on Instagram at I am DCRH. You can find me on Facebook at Davene CR Harris. And I have my different courses and programs and coaching sessions available for anyone who wants to walk that healing journey, because as we have that power in our hands to make better and to do better, we don't want to waste that. We don't want to give that away. We don't want to continue the tragic cycles and repeat the generational patterns of brokenness and being wounded and not going for help. As I said before, you're not blaming or putting bad light on the person who didn't know better and didn't have the resources. You are saying to yourself, I know it affected me in a particular way, and if I don't deal with it, it's going to affect the generations after me. So it has to end with me. So what are my closing words to you? Awareness is key, forgiveness is important, and healing is available.
Thank you so much, Davine. Thank you so much, viewers, family, friends. Thank you for tuning in this evening to Wisdom Wednesday Live talk show. And we have heard it. And as I've said before, we have deemed our Wednesdays to be Wisdom Wednesdays. And we are striving and thriving to be and to become a better version of ourselves, knowing that mindset is everything. And I've said it quite a lot. In order for us to become a better version of ourselves, we have to be honest. We are socialized in a society where we are somewhat forced to pretend and to hide our true feelings and to just look pretty and nice while it's not so pretty and nice. And for me, that's one of the things that I have decided from a child, that I want to be genuinely happy. And I know that I, my father is not never, or anybody, my father will not apologize, because in his mind, he has done nothing wrong. He said he has done his best. So from very early, I took responsibility, and I know that, okay, no problem. That's him. He couldn't do better. He's done his best. That's okay. His best, I've been hurt. And I knew from early that I those qualities were not the qualities that I want to in a marriage, and I wanted to experience what that life looks like. So I was very purposeful in letting go all those things and to push forward. And even every single day I say it, I speak it. I want to be genuinely, I want to be well, I want to be the best version of myself. And right now I'm still on my journey every single day to be better than I was yesterday. Because I realized that when we're socialized a particular way, sometimes, as I mentioned initially, with the overthinking, does it go all together? No. Does the things that we encountered in our childhood go all together? No. There are times when there's a situation that comes up and you snap. There's a situation that comes up and you feel something stir up from the past. But on your healing journey, on the journey to become better, you're able to deal with it, to identify it when it comes, and to not let it have that hold that it will have on you when you have not touched it at all. We have looked at not hiding our emotions and our feelings and putting them in a closet, putting them under a rug, because when we least expect it, it's going to come out. So we want to go on that journey. We want to make sure that we are able to cope or mental health. We realize that so much is happening in the world. There's so many persons losing it, and so many persons doing all sort of things happening to them. And we want to make sure that we are thriving and striving to be well. Find persons we know. We are from a culture that we don't want nobody in our business, and we don't want anybody to know that things are not going well and whatever. That's okay. You don't have to tell everybody, because we know how it is. When people know people business, they react to it, they treat you different, they take it somewhere else, and we don't want that. And that's okay. You want peace of mind, and it's something that money can't buy. So whatever we have to let go, we have to let it go. There are some things that I had to let go, because forgiveness isn't something I do for other people. I do it for me so that I can get well and I can move on, so that I can have peace of mind that no money can buy. So we are on that journey, and we want to become better at all we do, so we can be better wives, better friends, better husband, better mother, better at our job. Everywhere we go, we just flow and we just be good and dandy and merry. Yes. So thank you so much for tuning in with us this evening. Thank you so much, Davene, for sharing with us this evening. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Barclay, for being here and sharing. Right? And you can also check out Mr. Barcliffe. I'm going to put his link down in the description on Facebook and on YouTube. He has a Facebook ministry, Michael Barcliffe's Ministries, right? And thank you, Mr. Buckley, for being here and
Thank
for
you for the invite.
sharing. You're
Thanks for the
welcome.
invite.
You're welcome. So thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the evening. Bye-bye. Thank you, Facebook, for being
God
here.
bless.
Sitting here, not seeing the audience, but you're hearing everything. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for sharing. And see you next month, hopefully. Where I used to do Wisdom Wednesday every Wednesday, but I can't go up to every Wednesday. So it's now once a month. So when we do it once a month, we make it very impactful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. God bless.